Truth Unveiled here, and today I'm keeping you updated with the world around you and letting you know that America's in big trouble. It's time to wake up, America, and you're going to see what I'm talking about in just a second, because today I'm going to be talking about the Democratic National Convention as well as some other things that are going on. And remember, there's no coincidences whatsoever, but you've probably already heard today, and I'm at a report from Reuters that says Miss Clinton makes history with Democratic nomination for president, but there's something else going on, and it's time you see and wake up to the truth around you with both your eyes open. Because mainstream media will continue to distract you any single way they can because they do not want you to know what's actually going on. But I'm going to report on this so you can see it and so that you can see the bigger distraction, because they're distracting you from what's really going on. It's all a big scam. You never had a voice to begin with. Your vote never counted to begin with. But this report from Reuters says that capping nearly a quarter century in public life as First Lady, U.S. Senator and Secretary of State Ms. Clinton will become the party's standard bearer against Republican nominee Donald Trump in the November 8th election when she accepts the nomination on Thursday. In nominating Clinton, delegate after delegate made the point that the selection of a woman was a milestone in America's 240-year-old history. But what if I told you that they're all selected and not elected? Even your president FDR has told you that before. But it even says U.S. women got the right to vote in 1920 after ratification of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. But that's just too bad, because your presidents don't even follow the Constitution, which is why they have all those executive orders. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, please do more research on them on your own time, and I've even done videos covering them. But it goes on to say that Clinton, who promises to tackle income inequality and reign in Wall Street if she becomes president, is eager to portray Trump, a businessman and former reality TV show host, as too unstable to sit in the Oval Office. Do you really believe that she's actually going to do that? Do you really believe that Miss Clinton or Mr. Trump are going to do any of those things, or any candidate for that matter? Because newsflash, they're all hired by the same elite and the Zionists at the very top. They're all puppets for the Illuminati, who have the same goal and the same agenda at hand, which is Operation Depopulation through gun control and other measures. And we're going to talk about more of that in just the second to come, because that's actually something that they've been talking about at the Democratic National Convention, is nothing but gun violence and gun control. And is it a surprise or a coincidence that they just so happen to be talking about all the gun violence and the supposed gun control laws to be in place, when all we've been hearing about and seeing is so-called terrorism and all these threats and alerts of terrorism every single day? Is that really a coincidence, or is that just staged and planned ahead of time? I'll let you be the judge of that. And what I'm trying to get you to see is how this plays right into the hands of the Illuminati, and how this plays right into the cards of the elite. And if you're not awakened to it, you're going to believe every single thing they tell you. Remember, all of this is just a big distraction from what they're really trying to do. And what are they trying to do, you may be wondering? You're going to find out. But I'm here at a report from ABC, and it even talks about gun control and the bigger plans behind it. But it even says one of the most emotional issues that Hillary Clinton has made a part of her campaign is to fight to end gun violence, a clarion call that will be on full display tonight at the Democratic National Convention. A group of mothers, dubbed by the campaign as, quote, Mothers of the Movement, will take the stage tonight at the Wells Fargo Center and likely discuss the impact of having their children killed as a result of either guns or police-involved actions. Now, of course, the article goes on to talk about gun control and why they think it's so important, but I hope you see why mainstream media is pushing this gun control, because it's not about the guns whatsoever. It's about control, it's about surveillance, it's about the military police state that's even at the door, and that is what they're trying to do. That is what they're pushing, and the way that they can initiate their new world order is by grabbing your guns and taking your guns, and that's exactly what they're doing. And that's why we're seeing all of these so-called terrorist attacks, which, by the way, are all planned and staged ahead of time by the alphabet soups and by all those intelligence agencies, because there's always a bigger purpose behind all this, and the bigger purpose is to spread fear, because that's exactly what the mainstream media is doing. But they want you to fear for your life, fear for your life. Oh my goodness, a terrorist attack over there. Oh my gosh, a terrorist attack over here. So then they can make an excuse to take away the guns, blame guns on the problem in order to gain more control and to seize more little to no rights that you already do not have. Because if you really think that you have rights because you're an American, it's time to seriously wake up to the reality around you. Because you cannot have a new world order without taking away guns, without gun control, and without enforced police and military on the streets. But in order for them to do that, they have to continue to stage all these so-called terrorist attacks and continue to push the gun control agenda, which is what all the elite are doing. Has it ever occurred to you that all of the mainstream media, all of the elite, and all of those politicians at the very top, including Miss Clinton, are all pushing the exact same agenda? And my hope is that you're seeing it, because it's very important, because what just happened in Germany is only a test for what's about to come to America, and we know that it's only a matter of time. Now I'm here at the Activist Post, and this was reported today actually. It says German officials call to change constitution after Munich shooting. Military on streets, gun control. And by the way, Germany is not the only place that this is happening in, because we even see more military on the streets because of the so-called alleged terrorist attacks in France as well. So we see that it's spreading and uptaking like never before, and we see that it's only a matter of time until they finally unleash the military to America. But the question is, which military will it be? Because if it's the United Nations or the UN, then you know that there's something seriously wrong. Now it is high time to wake up out of that slumber and out of that sleep into reality, into what time it really is and what time we're living in. But here the report says that the bodies of the victims of Munich's recent mass shooting, if it was even an actual shooting, barely cold, German authorities and politicians have wasted no time in calling for more police state measures and the further clampdown on access to gun ownership in Germany. But the question I have is, even though they continue to take more guns and take more guns, why are we seeing an uptick and increase on these so-called alleged terrorist attacks? Shouldn't the terrorist attacks be decreasing according to them if their plans should be working? No, because they're trying to do something even more sinister behind all this, and you're going to see what that is in just a minute. But it goes on to say that Bavarian Interior Minister Joachim Herrmann is now pushing for going so far as to revise the German constitution so that limits are placed on using the military domestically can be removed, thereby allowing the German military to be used inside Germany for, quote, large-scale terrorist situations. Which basically means that they don't have to use the military and call in the military in a national emergency in Germany, but they can call them in because of the threat of so-called terrorism. Do you see the bigger agenda? I hope so. But let's keep going. The limits on Germany's military were put in place after World War II and in response to Germany's experience with the Nazi regime, with all its excesses, totalitarianism, violence, and genocide. Herrmann stated that Germany is, quote, an absolutely stable democracy, and as such, Germans should be perfectly fine with having their military deployed on German streets. Well, maybe they're fine with it, but trust me, it's only a matter of time until they bring it to America. And I don't know about you, but I'm definitely not okay with having the military surveillance me and follow my every move and follow my every step, and always having to ask for identification and papers every single step I walk, every single move I make, every single breath I take. And that's what's about to happen. It's already happening, and I hope you see it, because yes, it's taking place in Germany right now, but it's only a matter of time until it spreads to America and eventually the rest of Europe and other places. Remember, nothing is ever a coincidence, and it's no surprise whatsoever that in the past week alone or so, you've seen the attacks in Nice, at least that's what they want you to believe, the church attack allegedly, all of the attacks that we've been seeing in Germany and the activity of so-called terrorism in Germany, the Berlin hospital shooting, as well as all of the attacks in Sweden with the lone gunman in Sweden and the knife attack in Japan as well. And notice how it's always a lone gunman, as I've said yesterday in my video as well, and I'll repeat it and reiterate it once again. Why is it always a lone gunman, and why do they always blame it with ties to ISIS? Because when you know who's funding ISIS, then you understand who's funding all this terrorism and who the real terrorists really are. But what's most irritating about all of this is that there really is no terror whatsoever. There never was any terror. It's the same elite and the same Zionists who are at the very top doing all of these things and perpetrating all of these things for their new world order and to make the world as defenseless as possible from the military when they bring in the military, as we're seeing even with Germany. And I'm here to report from USA Today that even says German officials urged tightening of already strict gun laws, and this came just a few days ago when a response to the Munich attacks, and it seems like that's always the plan. Remember, problem, reaction, solution from the lovely world governments at the top. And what do? They cause the problem by causing all of these attacks, and then they offer their own solution by, oh, gun control. Oh, that's the problem. Guns are the problem, when we know better than that. And all of these alleged attacks, if they're even really attacks, are planned by the same elite at the very top. But I thought it was interesting in the report where it said that before Friday's incident, there had not been a mass shooting defined by the FBI as 4 or more people killed in a single event. Well, what if I told you that the FBI helped in that? In Germany, since the 2009 attack, there were 332 mass shootings in the U.S. last year, according to the Gun Violence Archive, and there have been 201 so far in 2016. And that just always seems to be the game of the New World Order. But is it really a game? It's not looking like it, because they've been planning these things for a long time. But what I also thought was very interesting and suspicious indeed was a report from the Times of Israel, and I'm going to leave the link below, that talks more about the situation in Germany and how it has to do with gun control. But it even says in the report that according to the German language Tagesschau news site, Herman spoke in favor of lifting the restrictions and said the military can also be used to respond to domestic terror threats. That sentiment was echoed by another state interior minister, Baden-Württemberg's Thomas Strobe of the ruling Christian Democratic Party, who said that while the deployment of troops was unnecessary in the Munich attack, we should have a large-scale, serious terrorist situation. We must also bring in the Bundeswehr, or the German police. And of course, criticism came and opposition came. But it's also interesting, because of this attack, Munich deployed 2,300 police officers to lock down the city Friday night, calling in elite SWAT teams from around the country and neighboring Austria as well during the alleged shooting. And that's exactly why this stuff is going on, because even in Germany, they now are trying to push these draconian laws and these draconian measures so that they can bring in the military and so that they can lock down the nation anytime they want to. Well, let me ask you this. If you start to see more ISIS-related attacks, because ISIS is attacking everywhere, but who's really funding ISIS? But let's just say that ISIS starts attacking in America. Well, then what if they bring in the military and they bring in the United Nations in order to fight off this threat and keep Americans safe? Because that's what they're really trying to do, because they're really trying to help you. But in all of that, what if they consider you a terrorist? Because you could be a domestic terrorist if you're watching this video right now. You could have some serious ties to ISIS if you're even against the New World Order, and if you even know about the New World Order according to your government and according to Project Megiddo and the FBI. So then what if they call you a terrorist and then they want to put you in a FEMA camp or relocate you? And by the way, your government has the so-called legal right to do that. Just look at all the executive orders that your lovely presidents have already signed, even as early as JFK. And if you don't think that this is the case, if you don't think this is true, I highly recommend you do some research on this stuff and see what they're about to do and see the bigger agenda and plans behind all this, because it's not a surprise or coincidence whatsoever that you're seeing about 10 terrorist attacks allegedly happen and conspire within the past week, along with all of the push for gun control at these Democratic national conventions and through Hillary Clinton and Mr. Obama and all those other ones who are just puppets for the Illuminati to make America as defenseless as possible in order to bring in the military, because last I checked, the United Nations can even have the so-called right of use of force in times of chaos. Do you know what that means? Do you know what that's really talking about? If you do not, please watch my video below so that you can see exactly what your military has in store for you. And while you're at it, please understand code words and keywords that the mainstream media are using that are even pointing at martial law, because anytime there's a state of emergency, that means increased military, because there's been an increase in troops in France alone within the past year since the alleged attacks in Paris back in November of 2015, when we know that was faked as well. Just like all the other ones, they're all planned and staged and funded by the elite ahead of time. And you can definitely expect more so-called terrorist attacks, and don't be surprised when all of this starts to increase in America and they turn the problem eternally, especially after the Democratic National Convention, because they want you to be as distracted as much as possible. Do not fall for the hype. Remember, mainstream media is trying to push this first female propaganda any single way they can. Do not be deceived and do not be fooled by the lies of mainstream media. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha so you can be awake and aware and alert to all of these things and ready for what's to come, because it's only a matter of time until all of this stuff reaches the shores of America. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to divide and conquer people as much as they can, and that's why you're seeing all of these alleged police shootings that are going on specifically in America, not to mention more draconian laws that are being pushed, such as the transgender bathrooms, as well as the race war and the race riots and all of the protests, because newsflash, the mainstream media and the elite are funding that too, courtesy George Soros and all these other different hate groups that are funded and planned and staged ahead of time. But this is Truth Unveiled here, keeping you updated and saying as always, shalom.